Hey there, how there, ho there. It's Jeff Cutter Diamond welcoming you to part two of my Cutter Simpsons Unhinged series, in which I'm looking at one episode per season of The Simpsons and talking about why it's relevant and, talk about certain topics at hand. Last week I talked about Lisa Goes Gaga and the fact that it was a terrible episode. It was basically Lady Gaga having the God complex, and the fact that, it was a terrible episode, and that, it speaks to how people just like to shit on Lisa and basically make her depressed and all of that. And of course, I talked about the cameos that were terrible and all that. So this week we're going to be looking at a Simpsons episode from season 19 called That 90s Show. No, not that TV show, but anyway, we talk about the Simpsons actually going back to the 1990s to determine like how Homer and Marge's relationship was after high school and before Bart was born. It's a pretty decent episode if you ask me. It does fill in a continuity error, and of course I sometimes struggle with that word. But we're going to take a look at this episode and, you know, talk about how much it makes logical sense, and the whole thing with Homer and Marge's relationship prior to Bart. This is episode number 2. Jerk Homer, Marge's worries, Bart's pranks, Lisa's causes, Maggie not talking a lot, Grandpa being senile, Patty and Selma boring Marge, Artie Sif is a jerk, Chief Wiggum making things happen, Mr. Burns being a dick. You can never stop the Simpsons. Heaven knows they've been trying for years and they still come back for more. 37 seasons is a bit much, don't you think? It's a crazy Simpsons. Something happens. A do 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 do. This is not a clip show. Have no fear. I've got topics for years. So this episode has to do with season 19, and for season 19 I picked the episode That 90s Show because it fills in a continuing error. And of course I can't say that word completely. Anyhow, so the plot is that Homer is so convinced by global warming he didn't need to pay the heating bill. Unfortunately, though, it failed miserably. So anyway, they have to huddle around a fireplace. And Bart and Lisa, trying to find things to feed the fire, actually discover that there's a box containing a degree belonging to Marge, and that Marge had graduated from Springfield University. And anyway, there was a lot of things going on. And Lisa points out that by her calculations, that because Bart's only 10, Marge and Homer are in their mid-late 30s. Bart had to be born later than the parents' relationship than they have been told. And what the fans have been told for 18 seasons is that Homer and Marge had a relationship after high school, and Bart was easily conceived in the mini golf course right after high school. But nope, it took some time and all that. So, anyway, Marge and Homer tell the story about how Bart was conceived and all that. It starts with a thing an apartment building. They graduate from high school and they're happily dating. Marge is an avid reader, and Homer actually ends up being part of a RAB group alongside Lenny, Carl, and Officer Lou. So, it was okay. And anyhow, Marge finds out that she actually got accepted to Springfield University. In the meantime, Kirk Van Houten and Luann are living in the same complex, and Kirk thinks that he's found Luann cheating on him, so he downloads a picture of her. Unfortunately, this is the 1990s, and dial-up speed was just so slow, so Luann uses the phone to make sure that Kirk doesn't know about the cheating. Why does Kirk even stay with Luann and all that? Luann's basically just an abuser of Kirk and all that. Nevertheless, so Marge gets accepted to university. Homer doesn't know how to pay for it, and then his dad Abe actually had a laser tag warehouse, and it laughs at Homer crawling to join him to work for him. He thinks that it's all about Homer needs money for his medicine, as in drugs and all that. But Homer is a clean person. It's it's because of Marge. Now Homer, I think, kind of doesn't want to tell Abe because Abe would mock Homer for the fact that he's whipped and all that. I don't know. Abe is so old school; it's terrible. And after all, that's kind of why Mona left him. So anyway, he's abused by the children and all that. Abe doesn't really care. Marge is happy with her surroundings, and a professor named Professor August is her radical feminist revisionist history professor and all that. Marge actually has an admiration for August, and they have a mutual attraction. August gets into Marge's head by saying that Homer is a simple townie who does not appreciate her intellect. Homer basically ends up upset and all that. Homer then tries to talk about Seinfeld in such a way that Marge says that, sitcoms are terrible and all that. So, anyway, Homer basically is, crestfallen that he finds out that Marge actually has feelings for Professor August. And in effect, you know, he actually gets angry. And in his anger, he actually reinvents his R&B group with a new sound called grunge, which Homer says is an acronym for guitar rock utilizing nihilistic grunge energy. They're known as sadgasm. Yes, you can see the point. And Homer sings a song and all that. Anyway, and they actually reference Back to the Future when Marvin tells his cousin Kirk complaining for the new sound and all that. However, Marge arrives at the concert, does not like Homer's new music, and Homer is not too happy with her attraction to August. So she goes towards August instead of Homer, and Homer is upset about everything. So Homer and Marge break up, and Homer, in one of the most amazing things he does, and to show why he's so committed to the relationship with Marge, when they split up their stuff, Homer gives Marge half his stuff. But what does Marge get? Marge gets the 1990s technology, whereas Homer keeps his outdated stuff. They split a Beanie Baby in half, but whatever. So this proves that Homer really cares for Marge. And Marge, I know, doesn't see it, but Homer's giving Marge a lot of great stuff, and he's leaving his stuff in the past. Nevertheless, Homer saves a song called Shave Me, and it's so famous that fans surround his new mansion. Homer actually is bored with his own fame, even though Weird Al sang a song about that. So, anyway, Marge and Professor August go down to the beach, and Professor August reveals his true feelings when he's not happy with Marge fawning over a beach wedding, and says that marriage is oppressive and misogynistic. Marge wants to be married someday, and finally gets tired of Professor August's stuff, and basically yells at him, saying that he's nothing more than a night professor. And we find out Professor August got the degree, got his stuff because his superior is a musclehead, if you will. So Marge runs back trying to find Homer and trying to get him off the juice and all that. Unfortunately for Marge, Homer has needles in his arm and tries to clean them up, even though Homer says he needs the stuff. The only problem is it was not the bad drugs, it was the good drugs, as Homer had ingested too much Frappuccinos and then he needed insulin because he caught diabetes. Kind of explains Homer's health problems. Anyway, in the hospital, Marge and Homer talk about things, and they even said that going into the 2000s, they're hoping that there won't be a, a president like Bill Clinton, cheating on Hillary with an intern, Monica Lewinsky, and all that, saying that that's just terrible. There'll never be another president like that. Of course, they're openly mocking the fact that President Bush, H.W. Bush, no, sorry, George W. Bush, is much hated because of his war policies and all that, and the fact that they spread misinformation to go to war and all that, and may have cost some people's lives. Of course, this is before Donald Trump ruined things. Anyway, they actually go to a mini golf course and have sex and all that, and that's where Bart's conceived. However, Bart and Lisa did fall asleep during the revelation, so they didn't really know. So anyway, this is huge and all that. So yeah, this was amazing and all that. Yeah, that's a lot of things. The episode was called 3 out of 10 and said that it changed the continuity of The Simpsons and it insulted lifelong Simpsons fans everywhere. So that was that. So yeah, so that's the gist of the episode. But the fact of the matter is going to be about Marge and Homer's relationship and the true feelings that, despite this 3 out of 10 episode, as people call it, it actually makes total sense. I mean, how many Simpsons fans were not fooled by the timeline? I mean, when you look at the fact that Marge and Homer have had birthdays and in the first 18 seasons and been referenced in their mid 30s, there was no freaking way that Bart, being only 10, would be conceived right out of high school. It's a cool story, and it just shows about how Homer and Marge continued their relationship after high school. The what was the episode called? Well, the Bart's birth episode is that Homer lives with Barney, doesn't really have much of a job prospects and all that. And Marge is a waitress at a no, sorry, Homer ends up being in a mini golf course and working for it. And Marge is a waitress at a burger joint. So then Homer impregnates Marge after the Empire Strikes Back, and Homer has to work at the nuclear plant to try to fix things and all that. And he gets the job because he decides to suck up to Mr. Burns. That doesn't last long. So then, of course, Bart is born. I mean, it makes total sense. I mean, I myself kind of figured that there had to be some continuity issues because of the whole thing that, you know, it doesn't make sense how, Homer and Marge are portrayed to be in their mid 30s and Bart's only 10. So they had to have waited a long time before conceiving Bart. And it worked out. I mean, it told the story that Homer and Marge were still in love with each other despite both families' disapproval. I mean, I think Abe was really disapproving of Homer's relationship with Marge and Marge's family as well. But they kept going and all that. I mean, for how bad this episode is, it actually makes total sense that they wanted to fix this plot hole and all that. I mean, a few seasons later, they fixed a plot hole that whatever the heck happened to Marge's father. I mean, we see Marge's sisters Patty and Selma consistently. We see Marge's mother consistently. What happened to the father? So of course, in the one episode, when they talk about Bart being born and Homer and Marge getting married, there's no father. Marge doesn't have her father, and it's never explained in the Simpsons episode what the heck happened. In the one episode in which Bart gets drums to deal with his attention deficit disorder, it's found out that Marge's father had died, but we don't know why. I mean, it took 7 seasons before we find out what happened to Homer's mother and all that, and Mother Simpson came about, and it was great, but they couldn't capture them. They did give us an episode that we found out that Marge's father died of lung cancer, and that it was covered up just like normal because they didn't want to ruin the tobacco industry. Well, that got ruined in the 2000s. Patty and Selma are upset that their mother would lie to them, saying, "I wanted you to be cool." It also proves how bad Marge's mother is to Marge because she doesn't even consider Marge's feelings in the episode. Saying, Patty and Selma, I wanted you to look cool. What about Marge? Anyway, so we find out about the lung cancer thing, and it brings some sisterly discontent. But the fact is that, for how bad this episode is, it makes total sense. I think every Simpsons fan who knows their mathematics and all that knows that this had to be trying to patch up a problem. It wasn't the best way to patch up the problem, but it was something. I mean, you look at the past 5, 10 seasons of The Simpsons, they're rewriting their continuity actions. They're doing stuff and all that. Like the Simpsons episode, the watchers of Simpsons episodes from the 90s know that, there's a lot to plug up. It just doesn't make sense. So that's that. So that's the end of this episode. Next week, we will be taking a look at Homer and Abe's relationship issues. Did it have to do with a dog? Did it have to do with Mr. Burns going cuckoo? Did it have to do with Chief Wiggum, the dog catcher? Well, we'll find out next week. I'm Jeff Diamond. Adieu.